Welcome back. In our previous video here, we were discussing the kingdom of heaven first being formulated in the intellect before God makes the new physical heaven that his children will dwell in. Remember, there's supposed to be a new heaven and a new earth. This earth that we have dwelt on since time began. Um, was created the same way. It began in God's intellect. He decided what he wanted it to look like. He made out the blueprint in his mind, and then he formed the physical one, which we live in. So you can be assured that if he did it in the intellect before, that he's going to do it in the intellect again before he makes the new physical one. It's going to be all formulated out. It's going to be blueprinted, and you can guarantee it's not going to be the same as the first one. For this one is supposed to be free of sin, whereas this one, there was sinfulness. Also, the earth that we've dwelt on for the longest time was a teaching lesson. Now, a lot of people don't know that there's teaching lessons out there. They don't know about how the trees tell a story. They don't know about how the water tells a story. They don't know about how the horses, the cattle, and everything created around them tells the story. It was in nursery rhymes growing up. Children learned it. For instance, Mary had a little lamb. Well, Mary was the mother of Jesus. And of course, Jesus was known as the Lamb of God. So you've got Mary had the little lamb, Jesus Christ. His fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, wisdom, the lamb was sure to go. It followed her to her lessons, to school one day, which was against mankind's rules. And it made the children laugh and play to see the Lamb of God in school with his mother, Mother Wisdom. Of course, that's never how the song was written out or never how it was told. This is the land of confusion, as Phil Collins of Genesis even tells you. Not everything is right there in plain sight for you to see or understand. You have to dig deeper. So as we continue now, we had gone over the kingdom of heaven and it being first formulated out in the intellect, and then a new physical one being made. And now we're going to continue as Moses starts talking about darkness being over the face of the abyss. Moses is right also when he says that darkness was over the face of the abyss, for the air is in a manner spread above the empty space, since having mounted up, it entirely fills all that open and desolate and empty place, which reaches down to us from the regions below the moon. And after the shining forth of that light, perceptible only to the intellect, which existed before the sun, then its adversary, darkness, yielded, as God put a wall between them and separated them, well knowing their opposite characters and the enmity existing between their natures, in order, therefore, that they might not war against one another from being continually brought in contact, so that war would prevail instead of peace. God, burning want of order into order, did not only separate light and darkness, but did also place boundaries in the middle of the space between the two, by which he separated the extremities of each. For if they had approximated, they must have produced confusion, preparing for the contest, for the supremacy, with great and unextinguishable rivalry. If boundaries established between them had not separated them and prevented them from clashing together, and these boundaries are evening and morning, the one of which heralds in the good tidings that the sun is about to rise, gently dissipating the darkness, and evening comes on and the sun sets, receiving gently the collective approach of darkness. And these, I mean morning and evening, must be placed in the class of incorporeal things, perceptible only by the intellect. For there is absolutely nothing in them which is perceptible by the external senses, but they are entirely ideas, and measures, and forms, and seals, incorporeal as far as regards the generation of other bodies. But when light came, and darkness retreated and yielded to it, and boundaries were set in the space between the two, namely, evening and morning, then of necessity the measure of time was immediately perfected, which also the Creator called day. And he called it not the first day, but one day, and it is spoken of thus, on account of the single nature of the world perceptible only by the intellect, which has a single nature. The incorporeal world, then, was already completed, having its seat in the divine reason, and the world perceptible by the external senses was made on the model of it. And the first portion of it, being also the most excellent of all made by the Creator, was the heaven, which he truly called the firmament, as being corporeal. For the body is by nature firm, inasmuch as it is divisible into three parts. And what other idea of solidity and of body can there be, except that it is something which may be measured in every direction? Therefore he, very naturally contrasting that which was perceptible to the external senses, and corporeal, with that which was perceptible only by the intellect and incorporeal, called this the firmament. Immediately afterwards he, with great propriety and entire correctness, called it the heaven, either because it was already the boundary of everything, or because it was the first of all visible things which was created. And after its second rising he called the time day, referring the entire space and measure of a day to the heaven, on account of its dignity and honor among the things perceptible to the external senses. And after this, as the whole body of water in existence was spread over all the earth, and had penetrated through all its parts, as if it were a sponge which had imbibed moisture, so that the earth was only swampy land and deep mud, both the elements of earth and water being mixed up and combined together like one confused mass into one undistinguishable and shapeless nature, God ordained that all the water which was salt, and destined to be a cause of barrenness to seeds and trees, should be gathered together, flowing forth out of all the holes of the entire earth. And he commanded dry land to appear, that liquid which had any sweetness in it being left in it to secure its durability. For this sweet liquid, in due proportions, is as a sort of glue for the different substances, preventing the earth from being utterly dried up, and so becoming unproductive and barren, and causing it, like a mother, to furnish not only one kind of nourishment, namely meat, but both sorts at once, so as to supply its offspring with both meat and drink. Wherefore he filled it with veins resembling breasts, which being provided with openings were destined to pour forth springs and rivers. And in the same way he extended the invisible irrigations of dew, pervading every portion of arable and deep-soiled land, to contribute to the most liberal and plenteous supply of fruits. Having arranged these things, he gave them names, calling the day land, and the water which was separated from it he called sea. After this he began to adorn the land, for he bade it bring forth grass and bear corn, producing every kind of herb, and plains clothed with verdure, and everything which was calculated to be fodder for cattle, or food for men. Moreover, he commanded every kind of tree to spring up, omitting no kind, either of those which are wild, or of those which are called cultivated. And simultaneously with their first production he loaded them all with fruit, in a manner different from that which exists at present. For now the different fruits are produced in turn, at different seasons, and not altogether at one time. For who is there who does not know that first of all comes the sowing and the planting, and in the second place the growth of what has been sown and planted? In some cases the plants extending their roots downwards like foundations, and in others raising themselves upward to a height and displaying long stalks. After that come the buds and the putting forth of leaves, and then after everything else comes the production of fruit. And again, the fruit, when first produced, is not perfect, but it contains in itself all kinds of change, with reference both to its quantity in regard of magnitude, and to its qualities in its multiform appearance. For the fruits is produced at first like indivisible grains, which are hardly visible from their diminutive size, and which one might correctly enough pronounce to be the first things perceptible by the external senses, and afterwards by little and little from the nourishment conveyed in channels which waters the tree, and from the wholesome effect of the breezes, which blow air at the same time cold and gentle, the fruit is gradually vivified, and nursed up and increased, advancing onward to its perfect size, and with its change of magnitude it changes also its qualities, as if it were diversified with varying colors by pictorial science. But in the first creation of the universe, as I have said already, God produced the whole race of trees out of the earth in full perfection, having their fruit not incomplete, but in a state of entire ripeness, to be ready for the immediate and undelayed use and enjoyment of the animals which were about immediately to be born. Accordingly, he commanded the earth to produce these things, and the earth, as though it had for a long time been pregnant and travailing, produced every sort of seed and every sort of tree, and also of fruit in unspeakable abundance. And not only were these produced fruits to be food for living animals, but enough also to serve as preparation for the continuous production of similar fruits hereafter, covering substances consisting of seed, in which are the principles of all plants undistinguishable and invisible, but destined hereafter to become manifest and visible in the periodical maturity of the fruit. For God thought fit to endue nature with a long duration, making the race that he was creating immortal, and giving them a participation in eternity. On which account he led on and hastened the beginning towards the end, and caused the end to turn backwards to the beginning. For from plants comes fruit, as the end might come from the beginning, and from the fruit comes the seed, which again contains the plant within itself, so that a fresh beginning may come from the end. And on the fourth day, after he had embellished the earth, he diversified and adorned the heaven, not giving the precedence to the inferior nature by arranging the heaven subsequently to the earth, or thinking that which was the more excellent and the more divine worthy only of the second place, but acting thus for the more manifest demonstration of the power of his dominion. For he foreknew with respect to men who were not yet born, what sort of beings they would be, as to their opinions, forming conjectures on what was likely and probable, of which the greater part would be reasonable, though falling short of the character of unadulterated truth, and trusting rather to visible phenomena than to God, and admiring sophistry rather than wisdom. And again, he knew that surveying the periods of the sun and moon, to which are owing the summers and winters and the alternations of spring and autumn, they would conceive the revolutions of the stars in heaven to be the causes of all the things which every year should be produced and generated on the earth, accordingly that no one might venture either through shameless impudence or inordinate ignorance to attribute to any created thing the primary causes of things. He said, "Let them run over in their minds the first creation of the universe, when, before the sun or the moon existed, the earth brought forth all kinds of plants and all kinds of fruits. And seeing this in their minds, let them hope that it will again also bring forth such, according to the appointment of the Father, when it shall seem good to him, without his having need of the aid of any of the sons of men beneath the heavens, to whom he has given powers, though not absolute ones. For as a charioteer holding the reins, or a helmsman with his hand upon the rudder, he guides everything as he pleases, in accordance with law and justice, needing no one else as his assistant, for all things are possible to God. This is the cause why the earth bore fruit and herbs before God proceeded to adorn the heaven. And next the heaven was embellished in the perfect number 4. And if any one were to pronounce this number the origin and source of all the the origin and source of the all-perfect decade, he would not err. For what the decade is in actuality, that the number 4, as it seems, is in potentiality, at all events, if the numerals from the unit to 4 are placed together in order, they will make 10, which is the limit of the number of immensity, around which the numbers will, and turn as around a goal. Moreover, the number 4 also comprehends the principles of the harmonious concords in music, that in fours and in fifths, and the diapason, and besides this the double diapason, from which sounds the most perfect system of harmony is produced. For the ratio of the sounds in fourths is as 4 to 3, and fifths as 3 to 2. And in the diapason that ratio is doubled, and in the double diapason it is increased fourfold, all which ratios the number 4 comprehends. At all events, the first, or the epistratus, is the ratio of 4 to 3. The second, or the hemiolius, is that of 3 to 2. The twofold ratio is that of 2 to 1, or 4 to 2, and the fourfold ratio is that of 4 to 1. There is also another power of the number 4, which is a most wonderful one to speak of and to contemplate, for it was this number that first displayed the nature of the solid cube. The numbers before 4 being assigned only to incorporeal things, for it is according to the unit that the thing is reckoned which is spoken of in geometry as a point. And a line is spoken of according to the number 2, because it is arranged by nature from a point. And a line is length without breadth, but when breadth is added to it, it becomes a superficies, which is arranged according to the number 3. And a superficies, when compared with the nature of a solid cube, wants one thing, namely depth, and when this one thing is added to the 3, it becomes 4. On which account it has happened that this number is a thing of great importance, inasmuch as from incorporeal substance perceptible only by intellect, it has led us on to a comprehension of a body divisible in a threefold manner, and which by its own nature is first perceived by the external senses. And he who does not comprehend what is here said may learn to understand it from a game which is very common. Those who play with nuts are accustomed, when they have placed 3 nuts on the floor, to place one more on the top of them, producing a figure like a pyramid. Accordingly, the triangle stands on the floor, arranged up to the number 3, and the nut which is placed upon it makes up 4 in number, and in figure it produces a pyramid, being now a solid body. And in addition to this, there is the point also of which we should not be ignorant. The number 4 is the first number, which is a square, being equal on all sides, the measure of justice and equality, and that it is the only number, the nature of which is such that it is produced by the same numbers, whether in combination or in power. In combination, when 2 and 2 are added together, and again in power, when we speak of twice 2. And in this it displays an exceedingly beautiful kind of harmony, which is not the lot of any other number. To be continued in the next video.